Happy morning, children. Today, English class for grade 6. In English class, we are going to see about in this video the shepherd's treasure. Here, I want to say something. This story throws light upon the importance of human values like honesty, wisdom, and humanity. How, by following such high values and principles, a shepherds have become a governor. Shall I start, children? Okay. A poor shepherd lived in Iran. He was so poor that he didn't even have a small house because of less number of schools during those days. He could never attend school to read and write. Here, in spite of his poverty and illiteracy, the shepherd was very wise. He was able to understand people's pains and often helped them to solve their issues with courage and wisdom. People used to visit him to find suggestions and solutions. Because of this ability, he became popular. His popularity reached the king as well, and he thought of meeting him for his friendly nature. Here, dressed as a shepherd and hiding his true identity, the king reached the shepherd's cave. The king reached the shepherd's cave on a mule. The moment the shepherd noticed him coming to his cave, he got up to greet him. He brought the traveler inside the cave and gave him water and food. The king took rest and stayed with him for the night in the cave. The king was impressed by his friendly, warm reception and words of wisdom. Though the king was still feeling tired, yet they decided to leave from the place. The very next morning, he expressed his gratitude to the poor shepherd for his warm and kind welcome. He sought his permission to leave the place. The shepherd addressed the king was Your Majesty, and looking straight into his eyes, expressed his gratitude. Here, the king was wondering and was full of joy to hear his words. He thought that the shepherd was actually very wise. The people like him were the need of the king. He must work for the king, and the king made him the governor of a small district. In spite of all the power and dignity, the shepherd remained humble and modest. People liked him and were full of appreciation for his wisdom and kindness. His behavior was just to everyone. He became popular as a good and wise governor. Here, the governors of other states developed jealous for him. They started speaking against him to the king. They started calling him dishonest and blamed him for keeping part of the tax money with him. They even posed questions over his iron chest. They said that it had all treasures had collected secretly. They made fun of him, calling him a common shepherd who was expected to behave in such a dishonest manner. Here, Initially, the king paid no attention to such words, but gradually he didn't believe that the governor carried an iron chest with him. He thought that he must inquire about the reason for carrying an iron chest with him all the time. Thus, the king called a new governor to the palace. He came on his camel. Everyone was feeling joy as the most talked about iron chest was tied behind him on the camel's back. Seeing this, the king shouted in anger and asked him the reason for carrying that iron chest with him. Here, the governor smiled and asked his attendant to bring that chest. All the people were very curious to see and find what it had inside, but when it was opened, they found no precious gold or silver but a blanket. The shepherd took it in his hands with pride and explained to the king that it was his what is that? Yes, it was his treasure, his treasure. But the king was curious to know the reason for carrying such an old blanket, to which the shepherd replied in a very dignified and respectful manner that the blanket was his oldest friend. In times of need, it would protect him if the king wished. He would take his new clothing, but that blanket was very dear to him. The king felt very happy to hear his words. The governors were ashamed. Now it was clear to everyone that the shepherd was the humblest and the wisest man there. Feeling proud of him, the king gave him a bigger district to look after at that very time. Okay, children, I hope you all are understood this story. Okay, children, note it down your today's homeworks. Okay, can you see here these questions? These seven questions. You have to find the answer for these seven questions from this story. Okay, don't forget to do this. Okay, children, we will see in our next class. Thank you.